You don't expect to come home and find yourself locked out of your own life. But that's how it started, on a Thursday night in January, the kind of night that makes you think twice about your life choices and your tire pressure. The snow was coming down hard, sideways, even like it had something personal against me. I'd picked up an extra shift at the plant because Olivia said we were short for the month, again. Something about groceries or her mom's prescription, I forget which. Honestly, it was always something. I didn't mind the extra work, not really. Gave me a reason to stay late. Gave me a reason to breathe. I pulled into the driveway around 10:30. The lights were on inside, warm and golden behind the frosted windows. I remember thinking, thank God, because my gas tank was on fumes and my phone was blinking at 3%. I'd barely made it up the hill without sliding. The whole neighborhood was a quiet mess, snow piling up like secrets nobody wanted to deal with. But the weird part was my key didn't work. At first I thought I was just tired, my hands numb and clumsy from the cold. I tried it again, rattled it, jiggled it, even gave the door a little shoulder like I was back in high school, trying to impress someone. Nothing, just a hollow thunk and the eerie realization that something was very, very wrong. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. The kind of knock that says, hey, it's me. Let me in. Then I saw her. Through the window, behind the curtain of frost, Olivia walked past in a t-shirt and pajama pants, holding a mug. She looked relaxed, almost happy. That was the first stab, seeing her smile like that. For a split second, I felt relief. Like maybe she'd just forgotten to tell me they changed the locks, and this was all some weird miscommunication. I tapped on the glass, waved. She saw me, and then she frowned. Not scared, not surprised, just mildly annoyed, like a neighbor who's tired of your dog barking. The phone in my coat buzzed. It was Olivia. Why are you knocking like that? She asked, as if I'd shown up uninvited. My key doesn't work, I said, still standing out there like a fool with snow melting down the back of my collar. Did you change the lock? There was a pause, then a little chuckle. Oh, yeah. Jasper thought it'd be funny. He changed it yesterday. I guess I forgot to tell you. I just stood there, mouth open, no words. The door cracked open, not all the way, just a few inches. Enough to let the cold bite me harder. Jasper's face appeared, grinning, of course. That same smug look he wore when he borrowed my tools and never gave them back. 2 years ago, he needed a place to land just for a while after his business folded. Somehow, he never left. Even in Laverne, he said, leaning against the doorframe like he owned the place. We're doing a family night. You know, family only. Behind him, Olivia sipped her tea. She didn't meet my eyes. Then her parents showed up like some cursed encore. Her mother with that ever-present sneer, like she smelled something rotten. Her dad, arms crossed, looking at me the way a man looks at a dog that's been on the couch too long. Laverne, her mother said, you always did have the worst timing. I wasn't sure what I was hearing, or what I was feeling, really. Anger? Confusion? Humiliation? They all kind of mixed into this dull, echoing ache behind my ribs. Maybe you should go to one of your little friends' houses tonight, Olivia said casually, like she was suggesting a takeout option. We're kind of in the middle of something. And then Jasper leaned in again, his breath warm and awful. You're going to freeze to death out here, you worthless fool. He laughed, and Olivia laughed, too. She high-fived him. That part one remember with a strange kind of clarity. The sound of their hands slapping together like a punchline. My hands were still in my pockets. I didn't move. I don't think I even blinked. The door shut, and that was it. No shouting, no fight, no explanation. Just exile. My phone buzzed one more time, a low warning that it was about to give up. 3% left. I stared at the screen, then at the door, then back at the driveway. The wind had already erased my footprints. You think when something breaks, you'll hear it. A snap, a crack, a crash. But when my marriage ended, it was quiet. Just a man standing alone in the snow, realizing he'd been written out of his own story. I turned and walked back down the steps, slow and careful, like each step might be my last. The snow swallowed the sound of my boots. My car was half covered already. I got in and sat there, staring through the windshield, not really seeing anything. The tank was almost empty. I had nowhere to go, and not a single soul I wanted to call. Something had broken inside me. Not loud, just final. And yet I didn't cry, didn't scream. I just sat there, breathing into the silence, watching the frost creep in along the edges of the glass. Whatever that house had been mine, ours, it wasn't anymore. And maybe I thought it never had been. And still, as I walked into that frozen night, leaving behind a house that was no longer mine, I didn't yet know. The real unraveling hadn't even begun. The first night, I didn't go far. I drove aimlessly for about an hour, past closed gas stations and darkened houses with smoke curling from chimneys. Everyone else had somewhere to be. Everyone else had someone waiting for them. I ended up parked behind a nightclub on the edge of town. Not because I wanted to go in, but because it was open and warm and loud enough to muffle the noise in my head. I sat in a corner near the bar, ordered a coffee of all things. The bartender looked at me like I was either heartbroken or a recovering addict. Maybe both. He didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. I stayed until they kicked everyone out. After that, I called Caleb. Now, Caleb's the kind of friend who doesn't flinch. We'd known each other since high school, bonded over pickup basketball and broken mufflers. He worked night shifts at the hospital, so when I showed up at his place just before dawn, he didn't say much. Just opened the door, handed me a blanket, and pointed to the couch. For 3 days, I disappeared. No calls, no messages, no explanations. I kept the old phone off and stuffed it in my duffel bag. The screen had cracked somewhere along the way, probably when I slammed the car door that first night. I let it sit there like a dead thing. Caleb didn't press. He let me be, just gave me space and coffee and the occasional frozen pizza. I watched snow slide off the edge of his roof, listened to the slow tick of the wall clock. Time felt thick, like I was underwater. The quiet was brutal, but also necessary. On the third morning, I got up early and went out to buy a new phone. The store clerk tried to sell me something sleek and shiny, but I picked the simplest one they had. Something about holding that new phone in my hand made me feel cleaner, like I was drawing a line between who I was and who I was about to be. Then, I turned the old phone back on. It vibrated for nearly a full minute before the screen caught up. 47 messages, and that was just the beginning. Most were from Olivia. The first few were furious, demanding to know where I was, how I could be so childish, why I was doing this to her. A few from her parents followed, echoing the same tune in sharper language. But by the second day, the tone shifted. "Laverne, are you okay? Please come home. This has gotten out of hand. We didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a joke." Then came the last batch, pleading, desperate. "Please answer me. I'm scared. I didn't think you'd actually leave. You're my husband. We can fix this." I didn't reply. Instead, I logged into our joint bank account. I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe some quiet voice in me just wanted to see if there was anything left of what we built. And in a way, there was. Just not the way I expected. The account balance was nearly empty. I stared at the number for a long time, thinking it had to be a mistake. But then I checked the transaction history. The withdrawals had started small, here and there, a few $100s at a time. Then larger amounts, spaced out just enough to avoid attention. They all led to an unfamiliar account number, one I didn't recognize. The pattern stretched back 6 months. 6 months of money bleeding out of our life without a word. I sat there, blinking at the screen, letting the truth settle into me like a slow poison. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just the laughter behind the glass or the lock that wouldn't turn. This was theft, cold and calculated. Later that afternoon, I went to the bank in person, asked about our safe deposit box. The woman at the counter hesitated, then led me to a small room. Inside, I found my passport, Olivia's birth certificate, the deed to the house, half of which was supposed to be mine. There was also a stack of letters from a lawyer I'd never heard of. I didn't open them right away. I just sat on a little bench in the vault room, holding them like they might burn me. I had that feeling again, like I was a character in someone else's story. The loyal fool at the edge of the plot, still clinging to a script that had been rewritten without him. When I got back to Caleb's, I took a long shower. Not because I needed to be clean, but because I needed to feel real. Solid. Like there was still something human under all this wreckage. Then I sat down, opened the new phone, and typed a message to Olivia. Meet me tomorrow. 1 o'clock. Coffee shop on Ash Street. Come alone. I didn't ask. I didn't explain. I didn't say I wanted to talk things through, or that I forgave her, or that I needed answers. I just sent the message and turned the phone face down on the table. Because at that point, I didn't need to know why. I needed to look her in the eye. I needed to see if she could. I got there 10 minutes early. The place was mostly empty, just a couple of students hunched over laptops and an older man nursing a cappuccino like it owed him rent. The coffee shop on Ash Street was quiet, the kind of spot where you could hear the steam hiss and the ceiling fans buzz if no one was talking. I picked the table by the window and sat facing the door. I wasn't nervous. I was clear. The clarity had come in waves over the past 3 days, slowly but firmly, like sand settling after a storm. Whatever this meeting was going to be, it wasn't a reunion. It was a negotiation. At 1:03, the door opened. The bell jingled. And I felt it right away, this pressure, like a draft in the room that didn't belong. It wasn't just Olivia. It was all of them. Her parents stepped in first, dressed like they were attending a church brunch. Her mother wore this smug little smile, the same one she'd had when she told me I wasn't ambitious enough during our first Thanksgiving. Her father looked like he hadn't even read the message, probably thought this was a show now. And then Olivia walked in behind them, face pale, eyes heavy. She saw me, hesitated. She must have known. Jasper strolled in last, chewing gum. I almost stood up and walked out right then. Not out of fear, out of disgust. But something in me held firm. Maybe it was the part of me that used to love Olivia. Maybe it was the part that had finally stopped loving her. I didn't wave. I didn't speak. I just waited. They pulled chairs around my table like this was some kind of intervention. Olivia sat directly across from me. She looked like she hadn't slept. Why did you bring everyone? I asked, quiet but direct. I thought we could talk. As a family, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded once. Fine. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the printed bank statements. I want to talk about the money, I said. Let's not dance around it. They all stiffened. Olivia's father leaned back in his chair like he was watching a courtroom drama. Her mother crossed her arms. Jasper rolled his eyes. I don't know what you mean, Olivia said carefully. I slid the paper across the table to her. My finger tapped the last transaction. You've been transferring money for 6 months. Thousands. It's all here. Silence. Olivia didn't touch the paper. She just stared at it like it might vanish. I thought we were struggling, I continued. You said we needed more. That's why I picked up extra shifts. And all that time, you were bleeding the account dry. Her lips parted, and for a second, I thought she'd deny it again. But then her face crumpled. Not the kind of fake crying she used when we argued, but something deeper. Worn down. Afraid. I gave it to my parents, she said. They were behind on their mortgage. And the medical bills. She glanced at her mother, who looked away, stone-faced. I didn't know what else to do, Olivia said. I thought I'd replace it. Eventually, I let the words hang in the air, long enough that they started squirming. You stole from me, I said. You took our money without telling me, and you gave it away. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Her father cleared his throat like he was about to defend her, but I held up a hand. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to lay out the terms. They all blinked, and I saw the shift, the moment they realized I wasn't here to plead. I was here to decide. You're going to return the money, I said calmly. Every dollar. You got 48 hours. And if we don't, her mother asked, raising an eyebrow, then you're all going to have to find a new place to live, I said, turning to Olivia. Everyone. That includes your parents. That includes Jasper. You've got 1 week to be out of my house. Olivia looked up sharply. Your house. My name's still on the deed, I said. Half of it is mine, remember? Or did your lawyer forget to mention that part? Her mother scoffed. This is ridiculous. No, I said, reaching into my coat again. What's ridiculous is thinking you could humiliate me and rob me and still live under my roof. I pulled out my phone. See, I recorded part of that night. Just enough. I hit play. The video wasn't long. Just a shaky clip through the frosted window. But the audio was clear enough. Jasper's voice, sharp and mocking. You're going to freeze to death, you worthless fool. And then Olivia's laughter. The high five. I set the phone down on the table and let the sound finish its slow cut. Then silence. I have backups, I said. And if my demands aren't met, if the money isn't returned and you're not all out within a week, I'll be sending that video to every friend, every family member, every colleague, including Olivia's job, along with a full police report. No one spoke. Even Jasper looked rattled now, chewing slower. I'm offering you a choice, I said, voice steady. You can do the right thing quietly, or you can deal with the noise. I stood. Olivia, if you still care about this marriage, if there's even a part of you that wants to rebuild, we start counseling next week. That's non-negotiable. But I'm not living in a house with people who laugh while I'm locked outside in a snowstorm. And I'm not married to someone who lies to me for 6 months. She didn't say anything. Just sat there, eyes shining, jaw trembling. I'll be in touch, I said, and turned to leave. As I stepped out into the cold afternoon air, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt clean. The wind was sharp, but it didn't sting the same way. The snow was melting now, slushy along the sidewalk. Winter was still here, but something in me had started to thaw, and I had no idea what Olivia would choose next. But for the first time in a long while, I knew exactly what I would. The morning after the coffee shop, I woke up early, earlier than I had in months, maybe years. Something in me was bracing for a storm, but it never came. Instead, I got a notification. The money was back. Every last cent. It came in 5 separate transfers. 1 from Olivia, 3 from her parents, and 1, I assume, from Jasper. It wasn't just restitution. It was acknowledgement. Proof that they'd heard me loud and clear. A few minutes later, a text from Olivia lit up my phone. They're moving out by Friday. Can we talk alone? Just once? I stared at the message longer than I probably needed to. There was no punctuation, no emojis, no pleading tone. Just a quiet request. Maybe even a peace offering. I agreed, but I chose the place. The park down on Millstone Lane had always been my thinking spot. Nothing fancy, just a bench, a duck pond, and some tired-looking pines that bent in the wind like old men with stiff backs. I went there that afternoon, bundled in my coat, thermos in hand. She was already sitting when I arrived. Olivia looked smaller somehow. Not physically. She was still the same woman I'd shared a bed with for nearly a decade, but there was something about her posture. Shoulders hunched, face drawn, like someone who had finally dropped the performance. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat beside her. We didn't speak right away. The pond had iced over at the edges. A few birds picked through the snow for anything edible. It was quiet, and I let it be. After a minute, Olivia exhaled. Not a sigh, more like a release. My parents have always had control over me, she said. Since I was a kid, I was the one who kept the peace, smoothed things over, paid the bills when they couldn't, lied for them when they needed it. I listened. I think I chose you because you were steady, reliable, kind. You weren't like them, and at the time, that felt like a lifeline. She turned toward me, but then we moved them in, and Jasper, and it was like they never left. They just swallowed everything. I knew it was wrong. I did, but I kept telling myself that you were strong enough to handle it, that you'd forgive me. She paused. But you shouldn't have had to. I nodded. Not out of agreement, exactly. Just acknowledgement. I appreciate you saying that, I said, and I believe you mean it. She swallowed hard, her breath fogging in the cold. But I'm done, Olivia. I want a divorce. There was no outburst, no argument, just a slow nod and a wet gleam in her eyes. I figured, she said quietly. After that night, I think I knew. I let that sit between us. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. What I felt was closer to exhaustion, like walking out a long tunnel and realizing you've been holding your breath the entire way. We sat in silence for a while longer, and then I stood. "Take care of yourself," I said. "You too." And that was it. It should have hurt more, I suppose. But there's something liberating about finally seeing things as they are, not as you wish them to be. That night, I made a call I'd been thinking about since the coffee shop meeting. Olivia's aunt, Beatrice. We'd only spoken a handful of times, mostly during holidays when she was still tolerated at family events. She had a sharp tongue and a good sense of humor, but she always felt outside the circle, like someone who had seen too much and decided to keep her distance. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Laverne," she said, not surprised in the least. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you." I smiled despite myself. "Guess I'm a little late to the party." "I'd say you're right on time." I told her everything, briefly, plainly. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a pause, and then a sound that could have been a sigh or a laugh. "I left that family for the same reason you are," she said. "Manipulation. Control. Your story isn't new. It's just the latest chapter." "I believe that," I said. "They do this to anyone who threatens their little ecosystem," she went on. "You think you're part of it until you say no, and then you're the enemy." I nodded. "I've got one last thing I want to do. Then I'm done." She was quiet for a beat. "You know about the family dinner, right?" "I've heard about it. Monthly tradition. Everyone shows up. Sunday. They pretend to be saints for 2 hours, then go back to whatever mess they came from." "Sounds about right." Beatrice's tone changed. Light, but edged with something sharper. "You should go," she said. "Uninvited. Show up at dessert and drop the truth on the table. The video, the money, all of it. You think that'll help?" "I think it'll be the one thing they can't spin," she said. "They've controlled the narrative for years. It'd be good for someone to remind them the truth still exists." I didn't answer right away. It wasn't revenge I wanted. Not really. But there was a strange comfort in the idea of standing in front of that room and just speaking plainly, holding a mirror up to their little theater and walking away while the lights were still on. "You're invited, by the way," she added. "You and I can sit in the back and watch the fallout together. I'll even bring popcorn." I chuckled. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," she said. "Some moments don't come twice." We hung up, and as I stared out the window into the darkness, the snow starting to fall again, I thought, maybe the last thing I need isn't closure. Maybe it's a little light in the room before I walk out. Beatrice picked me up in an old blue sedan that smelled like cinnamon and upholstery cleaner. She wore a green scarf and carried a tote bag filled with something she called emergency sass. I didn't ask. I figured I'd find out soon enough. As we drove to the dinner, I felt strangely calm. Not angry, not anxious, just clear, like someone finally standing on solid ground after months in a fog. I wasn't going to fight. I wasn't going to argue. I was just going to tell the truth. That was enough. The family home looked the same as always. Neat yard, wreath on the door, the faint smell of pot, roast leaking through the walls. Beatrice knocked twice and walked in like she owned the place. The room quieted when they saw us. Olivia was there, standing off to one side. She looked different, not just tired but thoughtful, like someone who had finally taken off a mask they'd worn too long. Her parents were seated at the head of the table. Jasper leaned against the far wall, arms crossed. A few cousins and second cousins filled the rest of the space, all turning toward us with guarded expressions. No one spoke for a long beat. Then Beatrice smiled and said, "We brought dessert. Hope that's not a problem." I stepped forward. "I won't take up much of your time," I said. "I just wanted to clear the air." I pulled out my phone, opened the video file, and set it on the table. Then I pressed play. Jasper's voice filled the room first. "You're going to freeze to death, you worthless fool." Then Olivia's laugh. The high five. The sharp snap of it. When it ended, I looked up. No one said anything right away. Then Olivia's cousin Rachel stood slowly. That's what you did?" She looked straight at Olivia's parents. "You let that happen?" And you laughed. Olivia's father opened his mouth, but Beatrice beat him to it. I was pushed out of this family for refusing to pay your debts, for saying no, for trying to protect myself. You told everyone I was selfish, vindictive, but all I did was draw a line. She turned to the room, and I bet I'm not the only one. Another cousin, Devin, spoke up. They borrowed $5,000 from me 3 years ago. Never paid it back. When I asked about it, they told me I was being dramatic. Someone else added, they used my name to co-sign a loan. I found out when my credit score dropped. The room rippled with stories, quiet voices that got louder as each one found courage in the next. And then, to my surprise, Jasper spoke. I did it on purpose, he said. The luck, the whole thing. I figured if I made it miserable enough, Laverne would finally leave. Clear the way. He looked around, eyes darting like a trapped animal. I was tired of him always being the decent one, the guy who didn't argue, who just worked and paid and stayed. His girlfriend, Alina, I think, stood up from the couch. You lied to me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You said he was unstable, that he abandoned Olivia. But she was already at the door, keys in hand. She didn't slam it. She just left. For a second, the room was frozen. Then Olivia stood. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She simply looked at her parents and said, You don't owe me anymore. Her voice didn't shake. I've lived my whole life trying to earn your love, cleaning up your messes, protecting your image. I watch you break people and call it family. And I let it happen. She looked at me. But Laverne didn't deserve that. Not once. She turned back to them. I'm done being your puppet. No one clapped. No one needed to. I didn't stay long after that. I said my piece, gave Olivia a small nod, and thanked Beatrice for standing with me. Then I left. But I walked out lighter than I'd felt in years. No weight on my shoulders. No voices in my head. Just a man with his dignity intact, finally stepping out of someone else's shadow. The divorce moved quickly. Olivia didn't fight it. In fact, she signed the papers quietly and even wrote a letter, short, apologetic, not asking for anything. Just closure. I kept the house. It needed work, but that was fine. I ripped up the carpets, painted the walls. Gave a name, mine. I adopted a dog from the shelter. Big, goofy thing named Booker who sleeps at the foot of my bed and snores like a freight train. He doesn't care about the past. He just wants to walk, a warm place, and someone who shows up. I get that. Olivia started therapy. Caleb told me she was going twice a week. We haven't spoken since the divorce finalized, and I don't plan to. But I hope she figures herself out. Not for me. For her. As for me, I'm not rushing anything. I wake up early. Drink my coffee on the porch. I listen to old records. I walk Booker around the block in the evenings. I fix things. Not just in the house. In myself, too. I'm not trying to become someone new. Just someone honest. Someone steady. On his own terms this time. And when I think about the future, I don't flinch. I don't worry. I just feel a kind of quiet optimism, like spring might actually come after all. Not loudly, but fully. And on my own time.